Sahana bhavatu sahana bhunaktu saha viryam karavavahai jasvinavadhitamastamavidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right. So I want to take this opportunity to go over Svadharma. I promised to make a video recording and address the issue of Svadharma. So we'll do it here today. So we'll do it here today. But first, I want to share a quick story, if you will. I began studying Bhagavad Gita, as a child. I began learning Bhagavad Gita, I won't say studying it, in class in school. And of course, came out of school, graduated, grew up, and as life does, began to hit hurdles, right? Nothing, the usual. You just go through life and things happen, uh, both professionally and personally. And I always, as I was going through these challenges and these hurdles, I was always thinking, what's the point, of all of my serious endeavor, my spiritual learning, spiritual practice. And I was living in Norway at the time, and I hit one very hurdle I hadn't expected to hit, a divorce. And I mean, I was thoroughly and absolutely crushed and went through an incredible personal spiritual crisis. I mean, who was this? Nothing out of the ordinary. Anyone who goes through a divorce will attest to this. But I was particularly upset about how up until that point, I thought in my own mind, I had done everything right. At least spiritually speaking, I had, grown up in spiritual programs with almost impeccable sadhana my entire life up until that point. I had learned the Bhagavad Gita, I had learned all the shastras. So I was going through all of this, having a real crisis of spirituality. And a friend of mine in Norway, he gave me a book by Anthony de Mello, the Jesuit priest. Great book. I recommend that one. Another one of the books I recommend, along with Viktor Frankl's In Search of Meaning. I recommend this particular author. He was a Jesuit priest from South India, no less. His name's Anthony de Mello, obviously from the Portuguese colonial times in southern India, when they brought their Catholicism and such. But anyways, be that as it may. So he was a South Indian Jesuit priest, a remarkable individual, spiritually speaking, and just in terms of his knowledge and understanding, and his able to bring the essence of Catholicism with his obviously ancestral foundations in Vedic spirituality. Anyways, my friend gave me this book. Get the name of the book. It's on my bookshelf. I have Anthony de Mello wrote 4 books. I have all of them. I forget which particular book this one was. I think it was one of his best ones is called The Way to Love. Beautiful book. But I don't think it was in that book. It was in another one of his books. I think it was called Meditations of Anthony de Mello. Anyways, he tells this story, Anthony de Mello does, of there was this one in the Catholic Church, in one particular Catholic church, I don't know which one, there was this one very earnest young man who wanted to become a priest. So the head priest welcomed this young man and got him started in the program. And this young man was going week after week, month after month, going through the program. Finally, this young man, he goes to the uh, head priest, and he's dealing with some tough personal issues. And the head priest says, yeah, well, he counsels him spiritually, tells the story of the suffering of Christ and the this and the that. And he tells the young man, yes, and if you do some Hail Marys and if you do some confessions and you spend this much X amount of time in the church and pray in this way, pray in that way. And he's saying all this to the young novitiate, the young priest in training. And the young priest in training says, my dear father, this is by Anthony de Mello's telling, my dear father, my dear priest, everything you say is entirely true, but thoroughly useless. And when I read that, when I was going through my personal issue, I got my divorce and dealing with all of that, and I read that, I was thinking, I felt exactly the way that young man felt. All of my so-called spirit, I was about 30 years old at the time, all of my, 30 plus years of, spiritual meditation and this and that, and that. It was wonderful stuff. But in this moment, it was absolutely and thoroughly useless. Anyways, but from that point, I began to, where the rubber hits the road. If the teachings of the Gita, the teachings of Vedic spirituality cannot help us in life's challenges, moving past them, moving through them, and coming out on the other end stronger and better, what's the point? If it doesn't make our professional lives better, if it doesn't make our personal lives better, what's the point? I mean, really, where are we going here? There's a kind of denial, a common term used nowadays, is spiritual bypassing. There's a spiritual bypassing. There's a denial of the reality of the world we're living in. So what's the point? That's when I personally began my personal journey of actually taking this knowledge and how I'm going to apply it in my life. And this is when I began to see the Bhagavad Gita. I rediscovered the Bhagavad Gita in the ways that I'm sharing with all of you here. And I've always been teaching ever since then. This was 25 years ago now. Wow, I'm that old. Ever since then, I've been teaching because I've been able to use the Bhagavad Gita. When I took the principles, the ideas of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, because the principles of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha are wonderful Vedic principles of how to live a successful life. And then I saw if I overlaid that, because those are practical ideas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. When I put them over the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita became an entirely different book. Because now everything in the Bhagavad Gita had a practical application through the lens of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. When you just read the Bhagavad Gita and attempt to study the Bhagavad Gita in its raw form, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for other individuals who are enlightened in that and so on. But when I read the Bhagavad Gita and Vedic spirituality in its raw form, it's entirely true, but next to useless, I won't say thoroughly useless, but next to useless, or resorts for me in spiritual bypass or denial of my physical reality when I go out into the world and hit challenges in the world that I'm living in. That happened until I was able to overlay and see the Bhagavad Gita through the lens and its practical application through the lens of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Now, I say all that to say this. What we are studying, this is absolutely essential that we come to the Bhagavad Gita knowing that it has practical application in life for dealing with the challenges that are inevitably going to show up. And even though the course we're going through, it's time consuming, we're grappling with all kinds of concepts in a very short period of time. I just want to let you know, to just reassure you that it's going to be worth it for your own being, not just for learning, but for your own ability to self-coach, even self-coach your way through issues in life. I cannot stress this enough. As we have the ability to self-coach when we're going through a difficult problem, a difficult challenge, difficult issue, we're able to actually use and see how Krishna, what I always like to say is, remember the Bhagavad Gita is spoken to a warrior on a battlefield. Arjuna doesn't have time to engage in theory. He doesn't have the luxury to sit down at a satsang, sipping tea and discussing the issues of life. This is not that setting. This is a life and death setting. When we come to the Bhagavad Gita, in the mood and recognizing the urgency that Arjuna has in that situation, it reveals everything we need to know about the challenges of life. But we still need to be able to view it through a lens that makes it practical. So don't be impatient with this process. Study the details. Study as we go through. Remember, we have to condense because so much going on and we're all professionals, we all have life issues, we're all, have so many obligations and responsibilities. Don't short circuit this process, because when you lay the foundation of understanding the practical gems that the Bhagavad Gita is providing, it's not going to eliminate challenges, but you're going to be able to go through challenges and come out the other side stronger. You always hear, hard times make good people better, and there's no progress unless there's difficulty. And I understand where that idea is coming from. But what is not said is that for as many people who go through hard times and come out the other end improved and better, there are 5 times as many people who go through hard times and it destroys them. It goes into addiction. It goes into checking out, losing their drive, losing their hope, losing their aspirations, and just living life, even to the point of ending their own life. It is far, far more people do not come through a difficult situation stronger than you. This is what's not said. All we have to do is just turn our attention for a moment to the world around us, and we see the epidemic of loneliness that people are talking about. My wife's friend recently was struggling with trying to end his own life, and she's helping him go through that. He's doing much better now, thanks to his support system. And I will say, my wife has been holding his hand for the past year now. So many people do not make it. I mean, not to the point where they end their own lives, but they just completely give up on hope, love, relationship, personal life satisfaction and meaning when going through hard times, because they do not have the tools necessary. So what I'm saying here is recognize this is a very, not difficult, we're all quite intelligent people here, but it is going to take patience and diligence. When you come through the other end of learning the Bhagavad Gita in this way, where you can actually self-coach, so that when you're going through difficulties, you can come out the other end, go through those difficulties with a completely different mindset, with a completely different attitude, and come out the other end stronger and better. Then go on to help your family members, others around you, if you're in a position of doing healing work for others, because what you are sharing becomes real. You have lived, you've experienced how everything you're learning is not thoroughly useless. it is enabling you to go through and deal and have a view on problems and challenges without losing yourself. I see there's a question in the chat. Yeah, always feel free to interject at any point. Excellent, excellent. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So be patient, be diligent, and rest assured that we're going to come out the other end with the tools that are going to enable you to go through hard times, not eliminating. Arjuna still had to go to war, right? That's one thing we get so lost in these ideals, at least in modern times, of enlightenment is all, running through wheat fields with flowers in our hair. Arjuna still had to go to war. He still had to deal with the issues of life at hand. That doesn't go away. But he goes through it and comes out the other end the better for it. So I wanted to spend this particular session on Svadharma because it came up last session and I wanted to make a video. I ended up making a 30-minute video, realized only 90 seconds was actually recorded. So let's go through and really pick at Svadharma here because Svadharma is foundational. All right, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, that part of Dharma, and there's many types. There's Swadharma, there's Ashram Dharma, Varna Dharma, Sadharana Dharma, Yuga Dharma. It's all types of Swadharma, all necessary tools. But what's the basis of that is Svadharma. It all sits on the concept of Svadharma. So we have to make sure we have a firm and clear understanding of Svadharma. So the question that was raised last time around, and an excellent question, an essential question, pivotal question, is there are morons in the world who engage in all types of foolishness, and it's their Svadharma. So how do we reconcile? Cause so much harm to themselves, to society, to innocent people, but it's their Svadharma. First concept we have to keep in mind. I think this part was recorded in that 90 seconds of the previous video, right? The arc of samsara bends towards moksha, right? The famous civil rights leader who said the arc of justice the arc of the universe bends towards justice. Fine. But in Vedic spirituality, the samsara, this birth after birth after birth, this cycle, that the arc of samsara bends towards moksha. In other words, for the living entity to realize, to have complete freedom, and they're able to exist in their full, complete self, uninhibited, uncontrolled, unconditioned by Kam, Krodh, so on and so forth. So that is the natural arc of samsara, bends towards moksha, absolutely essential. So when Krishna talks about Svadharma, when the Vedas talk about Svadharma, that is the foundation that particularly in human life, remember Svadharma is not applicable to animals. Karma takes over, samsara will move them towards the human species of life. Just all they have to do is exist because remember, Padma Deha, Bhoga Deha, very, very important considerations. Bhoga Deha, the body that expends karma, these are all your animals and so on and so forth. In those bodies, it's just for getting rid of expending unnecessary karma so that they're bending towards moksha. They come towards moksha by getting rid of all of that nonsense, that karma. When they come to the human species of life, karma deha, this is the species where we can create new karma. We can create new patterns. This is where it all takes place. This is the privilege, the value of the human form of life. We can make new paths, new karma, plant new seeds and get new results. But we come into this human form of life with karma that also has to be expended. That's Svadharma. So Krishna says, no matter what happens, no matter what you're going through, always stick to your Svadharma. And remember, Svadharma is not occupation. It's not occupation. All right. So it's not like, oh, my Svadharma is to build houses. It's not about occupation. It's about the nature of yourself that you bring to an occupation, right? Do you have a leadership mentality? Are you more docile? Are you more intellectually driven? Or, it's what you bring to an occupation, all right? So let's not confuse occupation with Svadharma. They can be closely linked for sure, no doubt about it, but it's deeper and it's more than that. So we start with Svadharma. That is the foundation. And then from there, all of these other dharmic considerations are taken into, our varnashram dharma, stri dharma, pati dharma, this dharma, then all those other dharmas are then taken into sadharana dharma, are all taken into consideration. And we build a life, human life, towards moksha. There's another verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yeyata mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, mama vart manuvartante manusha partha sarvasha. Krishna says, is all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. In English, it's a slightly deceptive translation. Accurate, but has to be picked apart. Krishna says, is all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Meaning, is all begin to move towards choosing, then we get the desired result. I reward accordingly. We have to choose. Manusha partha sarvasa. Manusha, this is of the human beings. As we choose how we build our life, we receive or we're rewarded accordingly. Animals don't have that. They are simply completely under the control of samsara, prakriti, and they have to live their lives. But manusha partha sarvasha, as human beings choose, then they can change what follows. So we start with Svadharma, and then we begin to build through the various other dharmas, artha, kama, and then to moksha. Now let's get to the issue at hand. We have a knucklehead who's going around causing all kinds of disturbances in society, and we say, oh, the person claims Svadharma is their get out of jail free card. No, it's not, because karma deha. They're in the human species of life. They can choose processes of development. Svadharma is the foundation, yes. That's where they start. Those of you, I spent a lot of time, and still do, teaching children in Gurukula. Have been teaching children since, I remember getting my first class when I was 17, teaching the Bhagavad Gita, no less. And you have 15 students in the class, and you're dealing with 15 different types of personalities. Some are little Duryodhans, and some are Narad Munis. And you learn to deal with each individually and bring them to the necessary result of the class you're teaching, right? Manusha partha sarvasha. So yes, we start with Svadharma, but it is incumbent upon each individual to engage and to choose the various processes of dharma to develop accordingly. Now, on the other hand, so the individual is not absolved. Just because an individual, we are engaged in our Svadharma, does not absolve us of the consequences of our actions, because we are in karma deha. We have the facility to choose otherwise. And in fact, we actually have to choose our Svadharma. Our Svadharma is not something that it's a proclivity, it's an inclination. But if we're not careful, we can be distracted from our Svadharma, which is why Krishna says, that's the instruction. Follow your Svadharma, because you can be distracted and dissuaded from it, because it may seem hard. It may seem like, oh, this is not bringing the best outcome that I want. So our Svadharma also has to be chosen. At the same time, we also have to continue to make choices so that while we are engaging in our Svadharma, we are building a successful life towards moksha. A nice example is I was actually, just this past week, I was watching a movie. It was Modern Marvels on YouTube, where they show how they build things. Very fascinating stuff, actually, the way they build like these big, huge aircraft carriers. Just fascinating stuff. But on one of the episodes, they were showing how to build houses on like a 90-degree slope, and how they stilts and they prepare the ground and the foundation, because only half the foundation is actually on the ground, the other half of the foundation is actually sticking out into the air, and they have to put struts, and it's just fascinating stuff. And I was watching, I was like, that's Svadharma. Because let's say you're on a 90-degree angle, there's a slope. This is the morons of the world, right? They have this Svadharma that is harmful to themselves and everyone around them. So they come into this world with this crooked Svadharma that they have to work through. To negate their Svadharma is to pretend like they're not on a slope. No, they're starting with a slope. There is some crookedness going on here. But a level, wonderful house can still be built on a crooked slope. That is the value of the human life. You can have a crooked slope, you can have a crooked mentality, but through processes of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, through the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, you can still build a successful life. Remember, the arc of the universe bends towards moksha. You can still build a level house existence on a crooked slope. Still possible. Please bear with me. When we talk about individuals like Duryodhana, I was just acting according to my Svadharma. No, you're responsible. You're going to deal with the consequences of that. But there's also the second part of that. Society around him. I think it was Winston Churchill who said of Hitler, it is not may not have been Winston Churchill, but it was one of the leaders of that era. He said, it's not surprising that, Hitler, arose and came into being. What is surprising and what is noteworthy is that such an individual came into being and was allowed to exist and perpetrate so many crimes without being stopped by the people around him. That's what's truly fascinating. Fascinating is the wrong word. That is a true travesty. There are Duryodhans and Hitlers the world over. Duryodhana was not. The people around Duryodhana, when Duryodhana was born, Vyasadeva told his father, you're going to have a problem here. You're going to have a very big problem here. Now, Vyasadev's solution to the problem is not something that I will even share, nor do I endorse. But Vyasadeva told Dhritarashtra, Bhishma very clearly, he says, this child is going to destroy the family. Vyasadeva predicted it. When Duryodhana was 8 years old, was when that prediction, if you will, came into light when Duryodhana tried to poison his cousins, right? An 8-year-old deliberately hatched an elaborate scheme at 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds are not as simple as we think they are. No, but no 8-year-old comes up with an elaborate scheme to deliberately harm another child, right? This was Duryodhana. At that point, he was surrounded with Kripacharya, Bhishma, Dhritarashtra, Vidura. Duryodhana could have been contained. But no, he was allowed to go on, allowed to just time after time after time. And he was doing this in broad daylight, for lack of a better expression. He was doing this with the full knowledge of everyone around him and with the blessings of his own father, Dhritarashtra. So it is not that the individual Duryodhana going through, yes, dealing with this Svadharma, any individual, any moronic person, yes, they're dealing with their own karmic tendencies that they have to work through. And yes, the arc of samsara bends towards moksha, which means they have to go through this purificatory process, even Duryodhana. It does not mean that individuals can be sequestered, individuals can be contained by the dharmatmas around them. If Bhishma had done his duty, if Dhritarashtra had done his duty, if Vidura had done his duty, if Kripacharya had done his duty, Duryodhana could have been contained. We wouldn't have the Mahabharata. So everyone around Duryodhana failed in their Svadharma. Duryodhana is the only one operating in his Svadharma. But because no one around them were holding to their Svadharma, this moron was able to perpetrate all kinds of evil. That's the problem. Because, and this is why Krishna tells Arjuna, do not walk away from your Svadharma. Because your Svadharma, if you're true to it, can balance and can compensate and can deal with others who are working through their issues and keep them contained and can keep them from harming the rest of society. You do your Svadharma. Duryodhana is doing his Svadharma. Dhritarashtra did not. Vidura did not. Kripacharya, the guru of the family, did not. And it's not my place to cast aspersions on those personalities. That's not what I'm doing. The Mahabharata is there to show us, to see what happens when all of these concepts, all of these ideas are or are not dealt with. So yes, Duryodhana has his Svadharma, but number one, he's still responsible because he is a human being, Manusya. He is in a karma deha. He can choose to reprogram himself. And all of the knowledge is readily available. All the guidance is readily available for an individual on a crooked slope to build a life of success. Very, very important that that's realized. But Duryodhana surrounded himself by morons who empowered and enabled him. So this is what the issues of Svadharma are dealing with. All right. Oh, there's something
I
in the
have a
chat.
question here.
Oh, yes, go on.
So, in the same context, what about Karna? Karna,
Yes. Karna
because
is a very, very, I get into a lot of trouble when I talk about Karna because there's some, I'm not quite sure in the context you're bringing it up, but I'll share something you can interject as if I'm going off base. So Karna, those of you who do not know the story of Karna's story is one of true tragedy, right? He was given up at birth by his mother. His mother literally put him in a basket and sent him downriver. And he was obviously he was a son of a Kshatriya princess, so he was a Kshatriya by nature. But he was adopted by lower caste individuals, so-called. And not only that, he had always wanted to be a warrior, so he was able to be taught by none other than Parashuram, the greatest Kshatriya of all, taught warfare and archery, and by Parashuram, he was cursed by another Brahmin. He had killed a Brahmin's cow, and this Brahmin cursed him, saying that when you are in a compromised, the most harmless position you can be in, you will be murdered because you murdered my cow who was harmless. Parshuram cursed him and said, because he had lied to Parshuram. Parshuram did not teach. He only taught Brahmins. He did not teach any other Varnas. And of course, Karna was a Kshatriya. So Karna lied and told Parshuram that he was a Brahmin. Karna didn't really know whether he was a Brahmin or not, but he just like says, I'm a Brahmin. Parshuram found out he wasn't a Brahmin, cursed him and said, when you want all this knowledge that I've taught you, when you need it the most, you're going to forget it. It's just going to disappear. So Karna has a life full of, his early life was just nothing but tragedy. And where I get into trouble is there are a lot of individuals who are, I don't want to say, no, pro-Karna is the wrong word, but they always highlight the fact that Karma had a tragic, an absolutely tragic childhood and upbringing. But the turning point came, the possible turning point came at the exhibition, at the Gurukula graduation, where Karna saw Arjuna doing all kinds of incredible things. And Karna thought, well, I could do that too. And he stepped forward out of the crowd and said, I can challenge Arjuna. I can do anything he does, and I can do it better. And depending on the version, they started and became more heated and heated and heated as they were competing with one another. And it was an exhibition. It was a friendly. It was getting out of hand. And then I'm not quite sure who, but it may have been Vidura or Bhishma intervened and said, no, who is this person? Where does he come from? This is an exhibition for Kshatriyas. You just can't walk off the street and enter the competition. Duryodhana saw that Karna was matching Arjuna event for event, and he saw an ally. So he jumped in. He says, no, well, if this is only for Kshatriyas, then I give Karna Anga, the kingdom of Anga, which is East Bengal or Bangladesh or that area of India. I give him that area. He is now the king of Anga. He's a Kshatriya. He can continue to compete. What was done was done. That was a turning point. And remember, this is the essential principle we always have to keep in mind. There is karma deha. Karna always has the opportunity, not the opportunity, he has the responsibility to choose. His father came and welcomed him. Oh, that's how it was determined. That's how it was found out that he wasn't a Kshatriya, because his father came, his adoptive father came and said, oh, my son, my son, my son. And then everyone realized he was not a Kshatriya because his father was not a Kshatriya. And at that time, at that moment, there was an opportunity. He had Duryodhana on the one hand in his ear, and he had his father on the other hand in his ear, welcoming him, saying, oh, you son, I'm so happy to see you, but you don't need to cause this confusion with the family, the Pandava family. And we see in Karna's life, every step of the way, he's always being given opportunities to make different choices. There's no denying the fact that his childhood was tragic. But one can simply, at the same time, another thing that is forgotten about Karna, a lot of times it's not, or it's unknown, we blame Duryodhana, and so we should. He was the person giving the orders. But the idea to, and I have to say this carefully because this recording will go on YouTube and YouTube has its rules. It was not Duryodhana's idea to assault Draupadi. The idea actually came from Karna. If you remember, those of you who know Mahabharata, back at the Swayamvar, when the competition was that Draupadi would only allow a person who could do this particular military feat of archery, she would only marry that person. So Karna stepped up and said, I can do that. And Draupadi said, absolutely not, because you are not. I want to marry a Kshatriya. I'm not interested in marrying. You're not a Kshatriya. It doesn't matter who crowned you king of what kingdom. We know you are not a Kshatriya. You're not the person I want to marry. She didn't say that. She said that through her brother Drishtadyumna. Um, so Karna was not allowed to. Some versions said he did. Some versions say he didn't. Be that as it may. So Karna was not allowed, and he didn't. Was not eligible to marry Draupadi. It was Karna's idea to have Draupadi assaulted the way she was. Duryodhana, the moron that he was, said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that." And then he told Dushasana to go bring Draupadi. Every step of the way, and then there's a conversation between Vyasadeva and Karna. When Vyasadeva told Karna, he says, you have chosen wrong." He did not divulge Karna's. This was during the 13-year exile. I don't know how many of you know the details of the Mahabharata, but it may have been Vidura. No, it was Vyasadeva. It was Vyasadeva. Vidura didn't know. Vyasadeva told Karna, he intimated to Karna, he says, Karna, you have no idea how wrong you are in just kowtowing and being a yes man for Duryodhana. He says, if you make the right choices, you can have the world at your feet. You are capable and are you have so much more available to you than going down this path with Duryodhana. So the point we see in the Mahabharata, Karna had every opportunity. First of all, the responsibility to make different choices. His guru was Parshuram, an incarnation of Vishnu. He had every opportunity, he had the responsibility to make different choices, and that is absolutely essential. We are karma deha. We are responsible for the choices we make, regardless of the karma we come into this world to deal with. So Karna in the Mahabharata really doesn't give a pass. He's not given a pass because he had all opportunity, he had the responsibility to choose differently, and he was instructed and advised by the greatest saints of his time, including his own guru, to choose differently, and he did not. So he's not personally absolved of what he'd gone through because of the choices he made. And secondly, he was also not prevented, again, it comes to the individuals around him. He was not prevented from doing what he was doing either. That also enough cannot be said by the fact that the people, like Winston Churchill says, it's not that these idiots exist, is that there's so many people around them that do not stop them, that have the ability, that have the capacity to stop them, don't. This is why Krishna makes it such a point, and I've mentioned this before in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, it's essential. Follow your Svadharma. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, follow your Svadharma. Because when we have a society where everyone is following their Svadharma, you're going to, Duryodhans and Hitlers and Karnas are inevitable. These are living entities coming into the world, dealing with particularly horrific aspects of karma and conditioning. They're going to appear in society. But if we have a society that is based on dharma, individuals are situated in their swadharma, then these individuals can exist, they can work through their swadharma, but safely and where they do not harm the rest of society. This is called, literally, Ram Rajya. This is Ram Rajya. When society is based on the principles of dharma, the leader of society is engaged and is living according to their own principles of Swadharma. That's the difference between Ram and Dhritarashtra. Of course, Ram is Vishnu avatar, but the Ram lived the principles of Swadharma. Dhritarashtra did not.
I have a question here.
Go ahead, yes, please.
So many people who live and they show that they are so good, but underneath they have this, the hate, or they have their Svadharma is different. We don't see that, right? So if they've gone through, I'm meeting a lot of people who have a lot of trauma. So on the top, they're like, we are so nice, nice, nice. But something comes up and I feel hesitant to do more with them. And I feel that's God preventing me because maybe their Swadharma is not right. And I'm not seeing that because they're not trying to show us. So, say if we are living with intuition, but how do we get to know? Is there a way to understand or know these people who put like a imposter, like they show themselves to be really nice, but underneath they are not. So how do we differentiate, and how do we understand their real swadharma so that we don't deal with that if
You
they are
can't.
negative?
You can't. The key is not because we cannot always predict. You're absolutely right. You have, absolutely people wear all kinds of masks. Absolutely. So you cannot predict. What is necessary is for individuals around the leaders of society, those of us who are in coaching positions, leadership, guiding positions, we have to be, what's the word? Versatile enough, if we have this responsibility, this inclination, versatile enough that when a mask is uncovered, we're able to deal with it. We're able to confront it. Now, in some cases, we may not be able to. In some cases, the individual's issues are more pronounced, more powerful. The situation may be an imbalance where we can't deal with it. I like the what is it like lawyers, right? They advocate for a criminal, but at the same time, they're also bound that if they know that the criminal is going to engage in more crimes, the lawyer has to divulge it. I think there's some, I don't know the exact legal term, I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers do have some responsibility, even though there's lawyer-client privilege and secrecy in that regard. But if the lawyer knows another crime is about to be committed, they are duty bound to divulge it. So similarly, people come to us as healers, as guides, and with all kinds of masks, dealing with all kinds of issues that we do not know about and we cannot know. But when a mask is peeled away, we have to learn, we have to know either ourselves, we have to know ourselves. This is Atmagyan, this is self-realization, self-awareness, that we are able to help this person having seen this mask being pulled off, or we are not. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita very clearly to Arjuna, for some people, this secret, meaning the Bhagavad Gita, should not be given. Some people can't handle the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a versatility in the knowledge and a responsibility on those of us who are all of you. When we're here, we want to self-coach. We want to have this knowledge so we can practically apply it in our own lives. And we want to be able to help and apply this knowledge to our family and friends and beyond, if that's our calling. There's something coming up in chat, and I'll get to that. I just want to answer this. So by Krishna's instruction and by my own experience is that, masks come off and not everyone, we are not able to help every single person. We may not be in a position of power to help that person when we see the masks come off. But if we can, the answer I'm trying to say is that we cannot predict we can have inclinations, and the more we deal with them, the more we know. The more we deal, the more we know. And masks will continue to fall. And we get to a point where we can continue to help. But we comes to a point where there's an imbalance, a power imbalance where we cannot get through. Then we may have to be like the lawyer and divulge what's coming to the persons around so that other harm is not perpetrated. Being a leader and a guide is a thankless task. It really is. It's a thankless task. Oftentimes, sometimes I do work and help with people, particularly. I love doing that type of work with couples. And that is particularly when you're working with couples and relationships. I'm sure You probably know this. When you're working with couples and relationship issues, that is a particularly thankless task because one person thinks that you're taking the side of the other, and you really have to work and be patient and working through it to bring them both together through the other end. But so definitely, and this is why self-realization, self-awareness, which is all self-realization, self-knowledge, self-understanding is absolutely essential. It is the first step, self-atmagyan, self-realization. There's something coming up in the chat I want to look at. Uh, it seems like the Pandavas also enabled the Kurus. Absolutely. Absolutely. Enabled Duryodhana by not saying anything because Yudhishthira would not say, yes, yes. This is absolutely so true. So very, very true. In the gambling match, Yudhishthira has completely lost his marbles and he is just gambling everything. I mean, he's gambling things he has no business. I mean, he's gambling everything under the sun. And Duryodhana says, not Duryodhana, Bhim. Bhima says, he turns to Nakul and Sahadev. He turns to uh, Nakul. Bhim of there's always dynamics with brothers, right? Bhim and Nakul, they were they were thick as thieves. They had a really close bond, Bhim and Nakul. So Bhim turns to Nakul and he says, Nakul, bring me fire. Bring me a fire, because I'm going to burn Yudhishthira's hands so he can no longer throw these dice. And Nakul almost got up to go do it because all the Pandavas were just horrified by seeing what's going on here. But Bhim was the only one who was going to physically grab Yudhishthira and just yank him out of the hall. Arjuna stopped Bhim. He told Nakul, Nakul, sit down. He restrained Bhim and says, Bhim, we got to watch this play out. This is not over. We got to watch this play out. We cannot, if we harm our own brother, we're just as bad as Duryodhana. Something's come up in the chat. So both sides are to blame. Absolutely. 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 100% both sides. Everyone are to blame because no one, sorry, I'm banging the desk here. No one is following their Svadharma. There's a reason Krishna emphasizes this in the beginning and in the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Dudes, if you follow, forgive me, if you follow your Svadharma, you're going to get Ram Raja on a social level. Now, again, there's another step to this, which is dharma is not enough, but at least you will get a stable, harmonious society where moksha can be chosen. Because if you do not have a stable society, you're going to get nowhere. So there must first be peace, stability, and harmony in society. That's Svadharma. So even if there's someone crooked in society, you can still build a stable society through Svadharma. When everyone is engaged in their Svadharma, you can have a stable society. That's why it's essential. So when the crooked people come in, you can still have a stable society because the crooked people are inevitable. In fact, there are more crooked people than not in many ways, right? Just the basic alliances. What time is it? 6 minutes to go. In the basic alliances in the Mahabharata, we see Duryodhana was able to amass 11 Akshohinis, divisions, armies on his side. 11. The Pandavas were only able to get 7. 7 to Duryodhana's 11. This is the imbalance that we have, and the imbalance has to be corrected. This is why the study of the Bhagavad Gita in a manner that is practically applicable is absolutely essential. So all of you have got to really take the time to imbibe this, become self-aware, gain self-realization, and this idea. So we hear people talk about self-realization like Nada and Mooney and floating. Self-realization is, I like to use the example of, it's like this, right? Your glasses are on your forehead or on your head. You don't know, so you're looking all, and this is actually very true. I've actually, I don't know if you, those of you who were here at the beginning of today's session, you saw me get up out of the chair. I was looking for my glasses, actually. I was looking for my glasses because I take my glasses to the Monday and I change bags from one bag, put in my computer bag, then I put them in this bag. So I actually got up just before today's session and I was looking for my glasses. Couldn't find them. They were in one of the other bags. The point I'm trying to make is your glasses are on your head. This is self-realization, sitting on your head, just like that. And you're looking everywhere for your glasses. This is all you have to do. So self-realization is not difficult. We make it sound like it's, stand on your head. And if you want to stand on your head, stand on your head. That's because that's your Svadharma. By all means, stand on your head. But realization, self-realization is as simple as recognizing the self and just club. It's so close. Self-realization is so close, is what I mean to say. It's so close. It's right in front of us. We don't know this, so we look everywhere. We look in relationships, we look in career, we look everywhere else except right here. We don't.
Horrible. I
Horrible.
just remember. I remember the story that you gave about the lion and the tiger, and he didn't realize that he was a lion, and then another lion came to him and showed him who he really was.
Yes, yes, it's another
And that
very
was
great
what.
example. Yes, exactly. It was the yeah, I'll end on that story. Thank you, Daviana. I'll end on that story. So there was uh, um, um, a baby lion who was born and the mother died, and this little cute, cuddly baby lion cub was, it was helpless. Mom had died. It was, going to be destroyed by nature, the elements. And a flock of sheep came by, saw this cute little baby lion, and they adopted this baby lion. So they raised this baby lion the way they're sheep. So the baby lion began to eat grass. The baby lion began to prance through the prairie like a sheep, began to bleat and bay like a sheep, and lived a wonderful sheep existence. And then one day, the flock of sheep, with this baby, this now full-grown lion who's running around acting like a sheep, they wander into some pastures, and then a wild lion, king of the jungle, hunting, comes chasing after this herd of sheep. So the sheep run, and so this other sheep lion, completely in fear, runs with the rest of the flock. So the jungle lion sees in the midst of this flock of sheep this huge, fully grown lion running in full fear with this herd of sheep. So the jungle lion says, I got to figure this out. So he chases after and he gets to this one lion. And this sheep lion is just on its back, quivering, bleeding like a sheep. Don't kill me, don't kill me, in complete fear. And in fact, the sheep lion was bigger than the wild lion. So the wild lion grabbed this sheep lion by the scruff of his mane, drags him to a river, and says, look, you moron, that's you. And through that realization, that's what Davian is referring to. We are self-realized. We have just forgotten. We have not seen ourselves. And that's what Krishna does to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. It is so self-realization is not it's made out to be this huge, climbing Mount Everest. I would almost say simply for nefarious marketing purposes, because individuals want to make, even Prabhupada in this time would say, Krishna consciousness the process is simple. It's extraordinarily simple. Now, the problem is that we're used to dealing with and having our attachments. We're attached to what we know. We're attached to a belief system. We're attached to being a sheep because we don't know anything else. But the transformation, the attachment is letting go of the attachment. That's difficult because we don't know anything else. We do not have a habit of being anything else. So we do have to change, let go of the attachments, and develop a new way of seeing the world. But it's not an alien existence. It is actually who we are. We are actually lions. I'll end there because I also have to head to the Mundir. So I haven't been able to correct any of the tests. I will get to correcting the rest of the tests. And moving forward, we'll continue with the next module. I think it's 3.1 or 3.2. All right. Anything to share or questions, just post to the WhatsApp. Have a wonderful weekend. Hari Hari.